better than your currency. Splurging millions, buying houses like Monopoly. Fucking 9 to 5, man, the money is a joke to me. Buying cryptocurrency, my money in the privacy. I make it rain dollars, they watch me disappear. I'm so fly, man, I'ma need some land again.
Hey guys and girls, welcome to this week's episode of the No BS with Birchy podcast. I'm your host, Nathan Birch, and this is a show unraveling the truth to the facade of the 21st century. We're now exiting the matrix and waking up to motherfucking reality. Today, I am here with a special guest once again, Stephen Sidorovski, my personal lawyer of over 15 years. Thank you very much for coming on.
Thanks, Nathan. It's a pleasure.
Thank you for helping all our clients out as well, right? Because it's there's lots of landmines out there, legal landmines when it comes to buying a property. And but we talked on our last podcast about, I guess, for those of you that haven't listened to it, go and check out the part one, which is more of a beginner's guide into legal. And we're going to go into more deep dive today. And there's lots of things and ways of how to protect someone buying properties and building their portfolio. There's different types of lawyers out there. There's lawyers that just want to sue and get every little drop of blood out of someone. There's a divorce lawyer. There's a criminal lawyer. There's a corporate lawyer. But you are a specialist when it comes to property and estate and structuring and planning. Would that be fair to say, Steve?
Yeah, so that's our primary area of practice. So property, conveyancing, and wills and estates.
You can go to a handyman and get the handyman to lay a brick wall and to tile your bathroom, but you can have a half-assed job with that, right? And you can call in an expert tiler. They'll have their laser level out and every tile will be perfect in the place. You can have a brickie that'll lay a perfect brick wall, take them 10 minutes to do it, a bit longer than that. But you need a specialist when it comes to these things. And, it didn't just happen overnight that I bought all my properties. It didn't just happen overnight that all our thousands of investors have built, double-digit portfolios have been able to stumble across and wake up like that. They've needed the right people around them, and always talk about the right team. And I'm actually excited because this is the first time we've really had you on to the podcast, Steve. A lot of people watch the podcast but don't watch the Facebook, the YouTube, the TV, the webinars and stuff like that. And always say the things that I'm doing, but I think it's important that everyone gets to see the team. It's having the right team around you, which gets you there. It's been very important to have you there. So thank you. I guess a question that I always ask to all our guests is, what does a no BS lifestyle mean for you, Steve?
A no BS lifestyle. It means
like a life.
just like acting with honesty and integrity, and just just being real and doing the right thing by people.
Yeah. But there's people in your life where someone says, if someone did something, you'd be like, if you said someone got drunk on the weekend, I don't drink for all of you. I don't even think Stephen drinks, but let's say if someone said someone did something drunk and did something silly, you'd be like, oh yeah, I could imagine that occurring, right? If someone said something about him, I'm like, I know Stephen is the most genuine, humble, and like for a lawyer, like you're a nice guy, right? Like lawyers are normally assholes, right? You're a nice guy. He's got a smile every time he does stuff. You carry yourself with that. You just say it as it is and make sure everyone gets to safety. Everyone gets to safety. I've never, in thousands, tens of thousands of people have dealt with you, I've never seen anyone get injured even with a bit of shrapnel when they come to you. You're there as their protector, their guider, and
and that's our job. Like at the end of the day, our job is to make sure that we protect our clients, which are the buyers, and we just make sure that everything's in place to be able to safeguard them from things going wrong.
Yeah, there's a lot of people out there. You build wealth and buy properties. There's someone that's trying to shaft you. There's someone that's trying to have had it over the years. The amount of knives people try and throw, whether it's in a transaction or that. I should look like a Stegosaurus Rex with all the knives hanging out my back. So it's important to be protected. So I guess the first one, just deep diving straight into it today, like structuring, right? A lot of people, there's myths out there. You can get a trust or get a company and buy properties in different sort of ways in a super fund. What's the best way, Steve? Like everyone's telling different stories and that. You've done lots of deals, seen lots of wealth, acquired properties for people. what's the best structuring, what's the different ways of structuring, and what's the pros and cons of it?
Yeah, so when you're buying a property, you have to buy it in the name of a legal entity. So a legal entity can either be an individual, which is in your personal name. It can be in a company, so it's a corporate setup. It can be a trust, or you can purchase in your SMSF. So there's a lot of ways, and then there's other ways as well. So, but generally for our clients and our investors, these will be the main ways that you would purchase property. What I usually recommend is that, so people think, oh, for asset protection, it's best to buy in a trust. And to a certain extent, it puts a few layers in between you and the asset. But now there's a lot of anti-avoidance provisions and a lot of clawback provisions that are in place. So it doesn't necessarily protect you in the way that you think it might protect you. My advice is usually to speak to your accountant to find out for your particular situation, insofar as for tax purposes and for financial purposes, what would be the best way to purchase? Because that also then flows on to, financing. Are you going to be able to get finance if you purchase in this entity? So you might say, I want to buy in a trust, but you'll never get finance approved, and you're going to have, you might not have that level of protection that you want. So you need to sort of look at it holistically and just see, okay, these are my goals. Sit down with your accountant, discuss what your needs are, and then they'll be able to sort of give you advice from that side. From our point of view, we can certainly, if you're buying in your super fund or in a trust, we can let you know whether the structure is set up correctly to go on the contract to be a purchasing entity. So we can certainly give you advice in that regard, but we definitely recommend that you speak to your accountant first when you're talking about structures and what's going to be best for you.
And you make an interesting point there, Steve, with the super fund, right, being set up. Like, there's so many shit people building super funds. They shouldn't be allowed to set something up, right? Like, I've seen so many people, which like a lot of people think that the trust and the structuring of it becomes a lawyer thing, but it's actually a lot to do with the accountant. The asset protection is, you can get sued no matter what you're doing in all different ways. You put 10 properties under a trust, and you could probably get one of those tenants that wants to sue you and takes the other properties under the trust. There's different, there's pros and cons, I guess, for every part of it, and risks around it. But a lot of it comes down to the accountant. I see the accountants out there which don't go through the accountants. I know they just go through their own accountant. They find someone that's $10 cheaper on setting it up or whatever, their friend or their family or whatever, and it doesn't have the right compliance. And the property, you're buying properties, you've got to look at the 5, the 10, the 20-year time frame, right? When you first buy your first property, you might be a single person that's, just out buying a property. 20 years down the track, you've got a wife, 2 ex-wives, 5 kids, whatever the case may be. And your position's different. So you need to plan out for that longer term, I think, and look at, okay, what are the pros and what are the cons of it? And I think looking at, a lot of people just look at risk, which you can protect yourself under your personal name still during different type of things, but you can also, people think that you can also get sued by trying to protect yourself. But most importantly, when you're trying to protect yourself, you could be hurting yourself tax-wise, you could be hurting yourself finance-wise. And what I mean by that is, if you're buying a property under a trust, let's say we buy a property in Sydney, and me and Steve aren't tax specialists here, so we can't give you tax advice, but let's just say you buy a property in Sydney, there's about $800,000 land tax-free threshold. So if there's 2 parties, two people, a boy, a husband or wife, whatever, that are there, they can have a $800,000 under one name and $800,000 in the other, where they don't have to pay land tax on. If you buy the property in New South Wales under a trust, you're paying tax from day one under that. So if the property's got any depreciation or negative gearing credits, then that's going to be trapped inside of the trust. And when the bank looks at you, it can also have negative impact on your position, because the bank would say, well, you can't make any of those deductions against your personal name, so they're lost and it's negative on your servicing. So I think it's important to have that whole team that'll go, in some instances it's good to buy under a trust. Some instances it's good to buy under your super. Sometimes it's good under your personal name, but you have to take that advice holistically from all of your advisors, I guess. And you got to plan, like I said before, in like 20 years into the future, 10 years into the future. If you're both, I don't know, 25, and by the time you're 35, you want to have kids, is the female going to go back to work, right? And I'm not trying to be sexy because people will go, oh, Nathan's a bigot or whatever, right? But let's say the mother of the kid wants to look after the kids. Well, if she's got no job, would she be better off having all the negative gearing in her name and all the depreciation and all that, or would the other person that's buying have that, and the person that's not going back to the workforce be better to have all the positive cash flow assets under their name to cover their cash flow from a tax perspective? And they're things that people, I think, need to look at a lot too in that mixture. So.
Yeah, definitely, and also those deeds, they need to be drafted correctly as well, because if you have a trust deed or an SMSF deed, a lot of those scenarios should be foreseen in those deeds, like if someone passes away, or if if you've got children, or if you don't have children when you're making it. But all these things, they should be addressed in these deeds, in the trust deeds or the SMSF deeds. And if you have a good like a good accountant or a good lawyer that will draft them up for you, they'll make sure they're drafted correctly.
Yeah, very important, very important. And I guess, like, when building out that portfolio, there's lots of parts that come to it, buying assets and all that. I'm going to quick go through it, but like we touched on in the last video about like due diligence and the searches, the checks and that. Is there any specific searches that you think is important for everybody when buying? Like, if we just go through from the top, like the important ones.
Yeah, so like obviously we do a title search. That's the most important one, because we want to make sure that the person that's selling to us actually owns the property. So
yeah.
That's the most important one. So we check the title search. That'll also show us if there's any other parties interested in this property. So like if there's a mortgage or a caveat on title, we want to make sure if there's several of those, that there's going to be enough to pay out these mortgages and caveats to be able to settle. Also on the title search, it'll show like if there's restrictions on use. So you might only be able to use the property. You might only be able to build certain types of properties. You might not be able to subdivide. It might have limitations on the materials you use. Or it might have limitations on who can live there. These are all things that will show up on the title. There's easements. So easements for underground sewage, underground, stormwater pipes,
overhead power lines.
Right. So all these things, should show up on a title search. So the title search is really important. And then aside from that, obviously you've got the plan. So you've got the plan of the land. So the size of the land or the size of the unit that you're buying. So that's important because you want to know, the dimensions of the asset that you're buying. And then you've also got your other searches. So, you can do searches with council to make sure that it's zoned for your intended use. You've got sewer diagrams, to, like I mentioned in the previous podcast, to make sure that the sewer main's not running underneath the dwelling. You've got flood searches, you've got bushfire prone searches, you've got all these things that, you've got to consider when you're purchasing a property.
I guess the other thing on the flip side, there's like disputes as well, right? Like people, I actually don't think I've ever seen a dispute come through from anyone that I've ever sent to you. Like, there's never been a dispute. There's never been someone that's, had an issue with a property, right? Because you do all those thorough checks on it. But if someone was to get into a dispute, what sort of disputes? Like, you see them on the news, people going, oh, the Land and Environment Court, stuff like that. Like, what sort of disputes and what sort of things could people watch out for, Steve?
So like when you say disputes, like there's so many things that can go wrong with properties. I mean, for example, you can talk about encroachments. So if you don't get a survey report done, if you're buying a house, and the neighbour's house is encroaching onto your land, and then you settle, you never did a survey report, that's an issue, because then you can have a dispute with the neighbour, and you're saying, you have to knock down whatever's built on my land. If you can negotiate your way out of it, that'd be great. But the best thing to do is to get a survey report before you get locked in, so you find out. There is insurance you can get when you're purchasing a property. It's called title insurance. So that will cover things like boundary disputes and any, for example, any improvements built on the property that may not be compliant. So you can get title insurance.
Never knew such a thing.
Yeah, right. So you can get that in. That's obviously instead of getting a survey or doing your council checks, you can get title insurance.
Okay.
So that's one thing you can do to minimize that risk.
Awesome. And I think like a lot of people have been watching, like lately I've been putting out, like especially like last month or so, I was driving through Queensland and people didn't know that I was buying motels the last few years, and people come to me saying, "Oh, should I buy a motel?" I'm like, it's a whole different kettle of fish, right? There's big differences there, right? I'm not suggesting to anyone to go and buy a motel unless you know what you're getting yourself into, because it's a property plus a business. You've got different aspects to it. A term that a lot of people may or may not realise is leasehold and freehold. What's the difference between leasehold and freehold, Steve?
Yeah, so freehold means you own the property and the land that the property is on. So you actually own the property and the land. Leasehold is you have a right to occupy the property, but you don't actually own the land that it's built on.
Yeah. There's a lot of waterfront properties that have leasehold. Because I think it's like the maritime or something. They don't allow you to own the land over the water. So a lot of waterfront properties I've seen just over the years, the ones that I've found are like that. But important, I see islands, right? Islands. I've always wanted. One of my goals is to have an island in life, and I just think, is an island a boat, right? A boat's just like you're just going to throw your money in the ocean. You're never going to get it back. With an island, I think, okay, if I wanted to build something, repair something, get a trade out there, you'd have to get a barge and take it out there with all the materials. Oh, this is a mess, right? But I've noticed that everyone always tags me in islands. They're like, Birchy, you should buy this island, you should buy that. And not that people are going to go buy islands, but I reckon like at least half the islands out there are leasehold, and they might appear cheap, and you see all the news articles, you can buy an island for the price of a house in Sydney, right? And it's like, well, you can't. You can buy a lease to the island, but you're not actually buying the island. So,
and you can't use it as security either. So you'd have to buy it cash. If you're buying a leasehold interest, generally you'd buy it cash, because no lender's going to use a leasehold as security because you don't actually own the land.
Property. Exactly. And I guess, you see a lot of laws that are changing out there nowadays, right? Like the government's getting a bit commie out there, right? They always have been, but they're getting a bit more like that. And there's a lot of pro-tenant things. And I'm sure there's like really shit landlords out there that, put people in properties that they shouldn't be occupying. But what sort of things can people do to protect themselves from like tenants and landlord disputes? So, there's like, you see all these things, a current affair and 60 minutes and people chasing each other down the street for things that occur. Like, how can you protect yourself from getting into a dispute? What sort of rights do you have as an owner, as just, on that front?
Yeah. So first of all, you should have a licensed managing agent to manage your investment for you, because they're on top of all the latest developments. They know how much notice you have to give. They know, how often you can increase the rent. So you have to have a licensed real estate agent like Blink Property to be able to manage it for you. So that's really important. The second thing you can do is obviously get landlord insurance in place. So make sure that doesn't lapse, and just keep renewing that. And with tenancies, when you're talking about it from the aspect of when you're buying a property, you just make sure that you make your inquiries with that managing agent, that they've got all those documents in place. So, for example, if we have a contract and it says that the tenancy is self-managed, we'll make sure that we ask for copies of the tenancy agreement, the condition entry report, the bond lodgement confirmation, all of these things before the contract becomes binding. Because if you purchase that property and you don't get those documents and it's self-managed, you've got, someone who's selling it's got his mate living in there, no documentation at all, and then you settle, then good luck getting him out. Yeah.
We need to send the boys around.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, contact Nathan.
And I guess moving on to a different topic as well, like compliance, just one thing you said there about having a licensed managing agent. It's kind of like when we were talking about on the last episode about having a conveyancer / lawyer, right, to look after your stuff. And the conveyancers, they don't have all the things there to protect you like a lawyer does. I always look at it this way, right? When you have a managing agent in place, if you do what they tell you to do, you're protected. Because the first thing, is that if they do what they tell you, if you do what they tell you to do, then you're going to be meeting the law, and then you're going to be fine, right? You got your landlord insurance policy in place. If something goes wrong, you're protected. But if they fail to do that and they don't uphold their job, then you've got someone else you can go back to for recourse and sue them, because they've got a duty to fulfill. So, it's just minimising that risk. And investing, like anything else, is risky. There's a risk attached to. People think the safest thing is put our cash in our bank account, and it's like 2020 to 2023, 2024 has taught everyone you can't trust these things. It's risky. Yeah. I guess talking about finance as well, we're in a market where some people might be doing it tough, and like our clients, we haven't seen anyone blow up financially because we're buying the things so cheap. They've got strong cash flows that's giving them positive cash flow in their portfolio. But people out there are going bank repo. I see it. There's under administration and stuff like that. If someone gets himself into finance troubles, like someone might be watching this and be like, shit, I've been watching Birchy for years. I bought some development sites. I did something. I can't afford it. What sort of things can they do to protect you? At what stage should they involve calling Stephen and saying, hey, can you help me out here? Is there anything you can do to talk to my bank, or whatever the case may be? What sort of protection can you do along that way?
So like at the moment, most lenders will ask you to contact them for leniency, and there's actually there's been some cases where if the bank doesn't act reasonably, then there could be some repercussions on the bank or on the lender. So even though under their, for example, if you sign a mortgage and you've got to meet these repayments and you fail to meet the repayments, and they'll send you a default notice, and if you don't remedy it within, however many days, they can take possession of the property and sell it from underneath you, right? And then sue you for any shortfall. However, if you can contact them first and ask for extension of time or leniency, and you can provide evidence that you've done that, if they do then taking these steps to repossess your asset, the court might look more leniently on you if you've made an attempt to contact them rather than just ignore them and then they just take possession. So my advice would be make contact, explain your situation, and in most cases they should be able to offer you some sort of extension of time.
Yeah, awesome. And at the end of the day, the banks are there to make money, right? If they don't make money by closing off loans and stuff like that, they prefer to keep your loan as their asset. So yeah. Cool. I guess one of the things that people look at, we touched on it briefly last time, we touched on it briefly beforehand, the taxes, right? When it comes to land tax, how you structure it, every state's got different land tax. We don't want to get into taxes too much because that's the accountant's job, but each state, I guess, has land taxes. You can minimize that by, does it go under your name? Does it go under your spouse's name? Does it go under the trust? Do we buy in different states? How can we minimize? Because each state's got their own land tax threshold. Stamp duty, you've talked a bit about, first homeowner grants, different states offer different packages. They change every week. Any other sort of tax stuff that
well, look, with land tax, essentially, so my understanding is that obviously your principal place of residence is exempt, and then any additional properties that you own, they take the combined value of them, and then if it's below the threshold, which I think it's around 900,000 in New South Wales this year, then you're not liable for land tax. But if it's above the threshold, then you are liable for land tax. And then if you ever sell a property, you have to actually make sure that you've paid out your land tax liability for that year, otherwise you can't settle. So it's important that if you are liable for land tax, that you do pay it on time, because then if you go to sell, you're going to have to pay out all of your liability. So they're pretty strict on that. They won't, if you've got several properties, they'll want you to pay out your liability on all of those properties, even if you're just selling one. Yeah,
very big thing that people need to realize, because you can sell it and then you get yourself into a legal position too. Because if you I don't know, bought a property for 200, you're selling it for 300, you've got 100 grand worth of profit there. You think you're going to end up with 100. You owe 150 on land tax across your whole portfolio. You might only owe 5 grand or even nothing on that property, but the OSR won't release it unless you chip in the extra 50. And then now you've got the commitment of completing on your contract to the other side, completing on your
Exactly. So these are all things you need to be on top of and aware of when you're selling property. Yeah.
And on that point, like if someone was to sell a property, we don't advise to sell properties. I think we should just buy and buy and buy and own the whole chessboard. What sort of things could you look at from protection of sale, like when you're selling a property? What things should people be looking at when they're selling a property or be considering?
Okay, so when you're selling a property, you just have to obviously make sure that you've got a contract that's valid and it's complete, because if it's not, I've seen like in New South Wales, for example, they changed the prescribed documents for contracts a few years ago, and there was a lot of claims where you had documents missing from contracts, and contracts would go to auction, they would exchange at auction, and there was one sewer diagram missing and the purchaser pulled out after the auction, right? So when you're selling, you have to make sure obviously that you have a solicitor, someone that's, that's across everything, and that your contract is valid. Obviously you need to, make sure that you're aware of what your loan payout is. So any liabilities you've got, take into account your agent's commission, your legal costs, your loan payout, and then see if you're going to have enough to pay it all out.
Is your loan cross-collateralized with something else? Is your broker shafted you 10 years ago you didn't think about? Yeah.
That's a big one. Like we have, so people that are selling, they don't realize that exactly what you just said. If their loans are cross-collateralized, then the lender actually has to do a valuation, and the whole discharge process, instead of taking 10 business days, can take a month, because they have to get valuations done. They have to reassess your position. So definitely that you need to take that into account beforehand.
And I'm going to talk about the biggest gangster move that any investor could do, or any homeowner could do when they're building their portfolio or selling off a property. And you, Steve, are the master of making this happen, right? You're the master of making this happen. When a lot of people think that, like, they might be sitting here thinking, I bought a property for $500,000, I owe $400,000 on it. It's worth $1 million now. I could sell it, but I have to pay out the 400 grand. I'll have 600 grand left over, and that's all they've got, right? But when they bought that property, it was 10 years ago. They've got a wife that doesn't work. They've got 2 kids at home that the wife looks after, and now they don't service at all with lending, right? A lot of people don't realize that they could keep that loan active and do a portable loan, or do a security swap, which is basically keeping that loan, selling off the asset, and you've got a 500 grand property, a 400 grand loan, 500 grand gain on it. You could sell off that property, but instead of closing the loan off at 400 grand, you could keep that loan open and attach 500 grand worth of assets to, and keep that open. So you still keep 500 in your pocket, 20% down being the $100,000, and you could attach, say, 3 properties to that and have more assets coming in your position. What are some of the implications to doing a security swap? It's not for a beginner. It's not for the faint-hearted. And it's like, I always say, it's like changing the engine on the car while you're driving down the freeway.
That's a good way to explain it. So there's a lot of moving parts, right? If you're doing a security substitution, then especially if you've got several properties involved. So like, for example, the example that you gave, you might want to buy 3 properties and do a security substitution where you keep that loan open, and then you just basically swap it for 3 other properties. So what you need to be mindful of is, if you're buying more than one other property in a security swap, you have to try and negotiate a special condition in each contract to say that, this contract is subject to the second contract proceeding, and the second contract is subject to the third contract proceeding, because if one of them falls over, everything falls over. So again, it's just putting a layer of protection in there, and that's something that you will want to negotiate and have that part of the contracts before we go ahead and do the security substitution deal.
Yeah, we've done a fair few of them over the years. It's like not many people do it. Hey,
it's challenging, to say the least, insofar as it's outside the box for the lenders. So, you know, normally when you get a loan, it goes to your, you know, the settlement team for your lender, and it gets processed and it's ready for settlement. These ones have to go to someone specific that's got to actually analyze it and work the mechanics through it, and it takes longer. And it's definitely something that that requires a lot of work from all sides.
I've always, like the other thing, have we ever failed to complete on any of them? Ever?
We haven't, no.
Exactly, right? It feels like Cool Runnings with the Jamaican bobsleigh team, right? You've got to drag that thing across the line, right? It's just constant, yeah.
Yeah, it's a lot of effort by all parties, but if it's something that, you know, that's going to work in that particular, you know, situation, then, you know, if you're up for it, we can help you.
Someone could have 5 properties today and they're negative cash flow, hurting themselves financially, all that sort of stuff. And technically they could sell off those 5 properties, reattach 3 properties to each one of those 5, and have turned that 5 property portfolio into 15 property portfolio pretty easily. Stephen's like, don't say easily, it's not easily, but it's
not for the faint-hearted.
Not for the faint-hearted, but when you've got the right team behind you, you can make anything happen. And that's like the other thing as well, like we've had 30 people rock up to a settlement beforehand. We've literally had 30 people. Like there was someone that sold 1 unit that had 10 units. They were one of 10, and the developer bought the unit complex. So you had the other 10 people, and that person had to settle at the same time. And then you had all their banks being discharged at the same time. So there's 20 people. You had the buyer that was buying all 10 units coming in at the same time. Then we attached 4 incoming properties to attach to that facility that they had. So then we had those 4 people come to the table. Then we had their 4 lawyers and their 4 banks that they were selling through. There's like so many people that have to come to the table sometimes. But yeah, it's a
whole collaborative approach, right? If everybody comes to the party, we can make it happen.
That's what I said. It's the biggest gangster move. Like, people think they can't buy anything. They think they can't get a loan again. If anyone's thinking of selling a property, they should think about, okay, what can I do with my loan? If I want to buy more properties, should I keep that loan open? How can I port that loan? How can I get myself into the best position? And that's really important. I guess just on a closing note, I always talk about depressing stuff sometimes, Steve, the things that people don't want to talk about. Wills and estate planning. We don't, it's unfortunately for some people, they don't live a long life, and for those that do, transitions that need to happen in different times. And I guess a lot of people don't like talking about it, but if you've spent your life building a 10 property, 20 property, 50 property portfolio, tens of millions of dollars worth of wealth, you want to make sure that your life's work is protected and you can pass it on to your children or to your loved ones or to your wife, to your mistress, whoever it may be that you want it to go to. You want to make sure that it's handled right. Looking at later stages of our lives, like I look at my mum now, right? My mum's 80 in about a month, and she's very mentally well, but she's getting frail and older and shit like that. A couple of times we've had to take her to the hospital. She's had stints in the hospital. And it's like, I often sit there and I think, what happens if my mum's totally screwed one day, right? What happens if, she can't come home, right? What happens in those instances? And, accidents happen, young people get injured, worksite issues, whatever the case may be. Who has the right to control your assets? Like I know someone, I know a friend of a friend that recently, young guy, big business, and he had an issue and he had a workplace injury, and he's starting to come back too. And I was told that he had, a will, and he had the power of attorney, enduring guardianship, the things in place to protect. So if it wasn't for that, the business may not have survived. And it's big business, big business. And I think that what happens to if you want to live or you don't want to live, you want to have an operation, you don't want to have an operation, who has the right, who has the final say, how can you make sure of that stuff? So I don't mean to turn all all sour and fucking sad on everyone. But they're just little things that you don't think of. It's just like, I'm going to live forever and everything's going to be fine. But what things can you do to protect yourself and put in place?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, look, everyone needs a will because that comes into play after you pass away, and that's to distribute your assets, right? After you pass away. But there's two other documents that you can have in place whilst you're living, and that's a power of attorney and an enduring guardianship. And what those documents are basically where you appoint someone else to act on your behalf if you no longer have capacity to do so. So the power of attorney is for financial decisions. And the enduring guardianship is for, health, lifestyle, consent to surgery type decisions. So with the power of attorney, that can come into play, and you decide. It can come into play straight away so that the person you nominate can act on your instruction, or it can come into play only if you lose capacity. And the things that person can do is obviously sign contracts. They can sell properties. They can buy properties. They can, well, not so much buy properties because, unless you're cash, you probably could. But essentially, they can take over your finances, and you want to have somebody that you can trust to do that. Because if you don't have those documents in place, then you can have, like, the government can come in and appoint a financial manager or a guardian for you, and it can be a government body.
Yeah. And not many good things come from that.
Well, exactly right. I mean, you know who is going to act in your best interest, and hopefully that person knows what your goals are and what your what your plan is for your life. Whereas an external party may not, and they may just think, oh, it's easier just to sell off all your assets, put all the money in a term deposit, and then you've got money to look after that person who's incapacitated. So you're better off to have someone that's in the same frame of mind as you.
Same frame of mind, same mindset, same goals, and respects your decisions. Like, you can't have a relative that's go, oh, why would you buy properties for? Their shit. Why would you do a business for? It's no good. It's safe to put it in the stock market, safe to put it in the money. They own nothing. They live in a caravan, and there's no offense to someone who lives in a caravan or whatever, right? But like, you need to look at, is that in line with my assets and how I see them moving forward? And you need to be careful with who you do appoint. You need to have someone that you can appoint, because the worst thing that can happen is it goes to the state and then you lose everything, basically, or your family loses everything you've worked hard for. So
yeah, exactly right.
And I always ask people, is your car insured? People say, yeah, of course my car's insured. You wouldn't drive an uninsured car. It's like, well, if your car that it's only 20 grand or whatever your car's worth is insured, what about your life's work? What about your spouse? What about your children? What about your family members and all your life's work? You haven't even paid the insurance policy on that, and that's a one-off of, I don't know, $1,000, $500, whatever. The wills are all different prices, and enduring power guardianships are different prices. But like, for the amount, it's cheaper than probably car insurance. So go get one.
Exactly. Yep.
Awesome, Steve. Thank you very much for your time today. Any final notes, any things that you think that people could do to protect themselves, get ahead, be diligent with,
Yeah. Look, just, I think that a lot of people, especially when you're first starting out, you might be more wary and cautious of taking those steps. But if you've got the right people around you and people that can give you the right advice, so your solicitors, your accountants, a good buyer's agent, a property manager, if you've got that team around you, you've got someone that you can ask a question to. And then once you've got the answers to those questions, you're empowered, and then you can make decisions for yourself. So I think it's really important to ask those questions, to get the right team. And once you've done your first few, then things will start moving much quicker, and you'll have the knowledge and the understanding. So I think that's the way to sort of push forward.
Awesome, Steve. Thank you so much. You've helped out on hundreds of my own purchases, thousands of my investors' purchases. Everyone's always got into safety. Everyone's, touch wood, everyone's always, over 15 years. So thank you very much for all that you do. If someone wants to connect with you, how would they find you? How would they get in touch? How would they get themselves that will? How would they get themselves sorted legally?
Yeah. For sure. So you can contact us via our website, so zenithlegal.com.au. You can drop me an email, stephen@zenithlegal.com.au, or you can give us a call at the office, so 02 9002 0520.
And on legal matters, what states and locations do you operate in? What states? Like, because
So-
lawyers are normally,
Yeah, so New South Wales, Queensland, and WA.
Awesome. Thank you, Steve. Thank you very much, mate.
Excellent.
Appreciate that. Thanks a lot for watching, everybody. Make sure that you tune in every week. We've got Apple Play, Google Play, Spotify, YouTube, No BS Birch podcast. If you need help with anything, building out that asset base, managing that asset base, whatever it is, reach out to the team, 1300 367 925. Email us at admin@binvested.com.au, and we'll catch up soon. Have a great week, and make sure to give us a thumbs up, leave a little comment there for Steve, and share it with all your friends and family. Bye for now.
Like Bilal said, man, we stuck in the matrix. This my advice, don't care if you take it. The dollar back to die, soon to be hyperinflated. This my 2 cents, don't care if you save it. Joint be decentralized and you will see you been lied to the whole time, and it's the irony, cause they do the exact opposite. You become a slave to the system, enough your money, all they do is profit. There's no conspiracy theory, you better hear me. Crypto will set you free before the system does. I don't care if you do or you don't, but what I'm saying is the truth to the reason you choke. I never been a failure, excuse my behavior. Keep talking, haters doing me a favor. They all tell lies, I know what they been telling you. I'm the opposite, the Donald Trump of Australia. It's amazing, here for the taking, my time is never wasted.